They are the protectors of much the Imperium values, and one of the key pieces of technology used by the Imperium. From personal ones to shields that can defend a Titan, we're talking about void shields. And there is a lot of interesting lore behind how they work and what their limits are, how they can be dense enough to hold a vacuum, but thin enough at other times to let oxygen through. Let's begin. Void shields are energy fields that are based around the manipulation of warp energy. They absorb the energy from attacks and displace them into the warp. If they are damaged and fall during a fight, they can be raised again within limits. And a wrinkle you need to know is, whatever they protect, void shields extend some distance from their point of generation. So say around a manufactorum, they would not hug the walls of the building, they sit away from the structure. So it's possible for an invader to penetrate the shield and damage the building. For example, from Rogue Trader, Battlefleet Kronos. While void shields are a more than adequate defense against macro cannon shells and lance beams, they are useless against slow-moving attacks such as torpedo salvos and bombers. When they are sparked into life, void shields create a bubble that's translucent. It distorts light energy to wander through and gives off a visual haze. I picture it as a rainbow in oil or visible within a bubble. In line with this bubble idea, when weapons impact void shields, they ripple like jelly. What is seen indicates how strong the shield is and how much punishment it can take. They also give off an ozone smell to those near enough. A shield with the right level can become a barrier that can stop all movement and even interfere with voxcasters, and even dimensional travel, from Hammer and Anvil by James Swallow. On the other side of the void shield, warriors and immortals in massed ranks concentrated their firepower on specific points of the energy barrier, loci that the Canoptek Wraiths had scanned and determined as the ideal points of overload for the attack. The humans had been careful, raising the power that coursed through the void shield until it was dimensionally impregnable, but the intensity required to do so was monstrously high, and it would exact a grave cost in time. Now let's look at different types of void shields. Small scale ones provide personal protection, like a personal shield in Dune if you're familiar with that. They can be used to protect a person or an opening such as a window or door. When switched on, if you are caught in the path of the emerging shield, you will be sliced and diced. From Titan death, there was a flash, just a bright flash, as if light had suddenly become solid, as if the air had suddenly become hard. He tasted smoke and heat. Zeit looked back in time to see the void shield engage across the doorway, chopping Manhide and Bothris in two, along with their gun, which exploded. It is quite amazing, a boiling fog of blood and atomized metal, men falling apart, torsos and skulls cut vertically like scientific cross-sections. He saw smoothly severed white bone, sectioned brains, light coming in through Manhide's open mouth as the front of his face and body spilled forward on the other side of the shield. Two sliced portions of human meat slumped back next to him, their edges curled and sizzling from the void field. With the right intensity, they can also contain, for example, an atmosphere, which can help if you are, say, fighting Nurgle and need to keep out the poisoned air. My take in terms of the barrier's strength are it depends on the level of energy put into it. It can be thin enough to let oxygen through, but deflect a lasgun shot by a sniper, but can also be high powered enough to block anything coming in. Portable barriers have been used by Marines and Imperial Guard to provide a protective canopy for the personnel deploying them. The next level up are protection for Titans. Void shields are their main defense from fire, and Titans are massive, so many generators on a Titan generate and overlap their shields for defense. When one is damaged enough to be overloaded, that generator will shut down and bleed off extra energy before starting up again. From Avenging Sun, a Titan's shields hold for a while, at least against bombardment. Lancers were among the most powerful weaponry available to humanity. With high output, long burn beams, the Swords of Brass's void shields boiled with empiric energies as they took the hits, casting the Lancers' fury into the parallel dimension of the warp. But the Lancers continued to fire, stripping back the shield and overwhelming their generators, until the violent purple discharges bled away, becoming blue and feeble, and the shields faltered. Before the Lancers were forced to snap off, one punched through the falling voids and cut a new molten smile across the face of the skull. As we mentioned earlier, the void shields are projected away from the body of the engine. A Warhound, for example, starts 10 meters out from a War Titan structure. Because of this, vehicles and infantry can sometimes bypass the shields to damage the Titan, but this is not easy to do. A Cadian regiment, in one example, damaged the knee of a Chaos Titan by getting through its shields, but were all but wiped out in the process. If you have technical specs on a Titan you can find a small shield defect that can be used to overload the shields. That's another way to get through. Now, what about void shields on ships? When on, they form a teardrop shape that protects the ship from weapons fire, radiation and meteor showers. Ships have layers of these shields, so if one falls, the next one is in place. It can then bleed off the energy and relaunch its field later if needed. When another ship tries to teleport across the shield, will block the teleportation, as teleportation also uses the warp as a conduit to get from one point to another. So to board a vessel, the enemy ship must first bring down the shields before boarding. Like before, these shields are projected away from the void ship's hull. Due to this, they provide little protection in most cases from attack craft and torpedoes, who are slow enough, I assume, to pass through it. However, get your timing right. The raising of the void shield is enough to endanger another ship, as it creates an energy backwash, as do energy flares from impacts on the shields, and when a shield does collapse, it gives off electromagnetic energy, which can disable craft nearby. From Dark Imperium, a void shield around a ship is the situation we're in. The first round of projectiles came at them not long after. Destroyers escorting the larger cruisers and battleships fired anti-munitions in response. A series of pinpricks explosions started up and soon became a constant accompaniment to the advance. A handful of torpedoes got through, dangerous for their kinetic energy more than the payloads they carried, but they exploded upon the void shields of the ship, thousands of feet short of the hulls. The shields blinked and flashed as they shunted destructive energies into the warp, and from execution hour, when a bomber wanders through a void shield, and then there was only the blankness of space around them, followed by the telltale pulling sensation, and a split second later, a rumbling shudder as the Imperial bomber passed through in sequence. It carries gravity field and protective void shields. And finally, when it comes to void shields, Navy ships should specifically maintain void shields at around 50%, but the void shield's energy means they are generally kept at a minimum power when not in active combat. So I hope that has enlightened you about void shields, and let me know your comments below if you have any questions, and if you like this video on weapons, you might also like this one.